Okay, so here we are working down with the gear. Now you can probably see, if I try and bring this in a little bit closer, we've got this wire system coming down here, and I'll show you a little bit better in a moment about that one. That's just the power feed loose end, because we're going to come down to here and then hide it, and then by the time this is on the baseboard for it, you're not going to see this wiring coming off, which you can probably see here, then travels off, okay? And then obviously go off to the power supply and everything else, powering up all the electrics on the aircraft. So the second one is like, how do we do it? Now, I say it's a bit tricky trying to get in here. But basically, in a nutshell, what we're using is some of this stuff. This is little 1mm tape, okay? It's made by Jammy Dog. So all we do, grab a large length of it, okay? And as I say, it's only 1mm big, okay? So it's quite small. And then what you can do is, now I'm doing this back to front so you can see it, so it's a lot harder than it really is. But basically we poke our cable, our bit of tape down in there, grab it with the other side, it's a bit like doing surgery this. Okay, wrap it up to where we want it. So I think we're going to pull it to the inside. As I say, it's one of those real tricky ones where I'm trying to show you and do it backwards. Okay, then what you do, you just bring it up and then stick it together. Okay, so you just wrap it around, bring it up, just like so. Okay, and then once you've got it up like that, what you can actually do is position your cable of how you want it to lay and everything else. Now we're going to scrape off the paint and everything, that goes without saying. Okay, but we sort of bunch it to how we actually want it to be. So we can grab our cables, our lines, okay, and that sort of just tacks it into place quite roughly how we want it. So we nudge those cables together, just like that. Then we can take a tiny drop of super glue, okay, I'm just going to place it down on a scrap bit of paper, and then using it on a cocktail stick, we're just going to dab exactly where it is, just to lock it into place. And also obviously it'll hold the tape and everything else. Square the kicker, and that will just freeze it into position as that sticks. Bit of a blow just to hold it all into place. Okay, and that should hold it in there quite nicely. And then what you can do, you can then cut off the excess tape, just like so, and then push that nicely in to hold it into position. Same with the other side. And you sort of wrap it round on itself. So for instance, just down here we've got to wrap that round, and then always best to glue the tape ends together. The reason for doing that is over time it could come unravelled, even though you're going to paint it. Okay, so always worth giving them a little bit of glue just to hold them in. Obviously it'll round off any areas there is at all. Then all we do is basically paint the lines black, and away we go. So if we show you up to the camera, we can show you what we got. So there we go, that's the brake lines done. Obviously we're looking at this side, the one that's done, but to say, from all purposes of how the angle is and everything, it's going to look from behind, as you can see, just like a brake line coming off. Alright, so that takes care of that particular problem, and obviously it gets rid of all the cables. So all you need to do then is obviously tack it to the foot end just down in here. Okay, so once you've got it tacked on the end like we did with this one over here, once that's on, then you've got your wires and they'll go down into the baseboard and everything else. So that is really taking care of that. The only other thing we've done is just down on the nav lights down here, we've put some PVA glue just to smooth it all over, because obviously we had the colour to make it go red. Now we've got the PVA glue. Once that's gone off, it will give us our nice cover look for it. You can put a little bit of future or gloss just over the top to sharpen it up, just like that. So what we're going to do now, fix the nose wheel properly into one of the positions, obviously in the nose up position or the down, whichever one we're going to use. Okay, and then what we can do is go around and we're going to put the angle of attack metal areas in, and they're dead simple because they are in here. In your bag with your clear parts, you have them in a little bag just like this, you can see. So in there you've got two angle of attack ones which go on the side of the nose, okay, and on the long PTO tube. Because it's metal, it's probably well worth putting it on very, very last and everything else. So we're going to get that done. We'll get these wires secured, painted up, just tied up for the moment and everything else like that. We're going to go along and we're just going to put those little attachments on for the ejector seats. We'll get them fitted in, then we can get the crew. We'll have one final look at the crew, get the crew put in there, and we're really coming towards the end. Okay, so we're getting pretty near to completion now. The jet's almost there. We've just got all the little bits and pieces to go on, which we'll talk about in a moment. But first of all, we've got all these bits laid out down here, and this is the weapons fit. Now obviously it's personal choice, so we've got these big fuel tanks. We've got two 600-gallon tanks that are going to go on there, centerline fuel tank. We've got both the targeting pods, so we've got both the lantern system and the navigation system as well. So we've got two targeting pods as well to build. Okay, and at the same time we've got the Python 2 missiles, we've got them both there. They're in multiple parts, you can see. We've got the AMRAAM, the medium range air-to-air missiles here. We've got JDAM and laser guided GBU bombs. So quite a few to put together. I'm not going to bore you to death by showing you put together. So I'm going to get all these put together. They can be drying, and as they're starting to dry, the glue's drying on those, we can do the final touches to the F-16. Okay, so you can see down here we've got all the weapons done. The only difference I've had to make is I've done a little bit of research, and unfortunately these absolutely gorgeous resin horizontal ejector racks, it's two, they're horizontal side by side, very much like the US Navy and Marine Corps Hornets have. Unfortunately they don't carry guided bombs, they're just free fall bombs, so we've had to revert back to the kit part again, which isn't too bad for the tier, for the triple ejector racks, what tier stands for, or you get mere multiple ejector rack. Now what it is, basically two halves go together and two cleats on the outside, so all of those are drying, they're wet at the moment, but the Python missiles are particularly nice. They're all very nicely detailed and everything else like that, and because of the scale they're like mini models on their own. So the other thing we're doing at the moment whilst those are drying, and then we can sand, polish, and then we can obviously get on with painting and decaling those, and obviously weapon fit, we're going to start to put all the little bits onto this. Now we've got lots of bits still to go on. Some of them are very straightforward, others are a little bit more tricky. I'm going to explain what we're doing here in the cockpit. Now the cockpit itself, obviously we used the resin one, which was an absolutely cracking piece of kit. Lovely detail, all the rest of it. There's a couple of things that need still to go on. Now down the front here you can probably see two white lumps. Now these are the angle of attack sensors that sit on top of the HUD. They are resin, they're on a little block. Just like this. We've cut them off and we've just put them on, and then we've got half of the HUD just down here. Now the HUD itself is the kit part, and it just has two halves that go in. So just down out of sight I've got a little tiny bit of super glue, okay, which I'm using because obviously we're sticking resin parts on, and then we're just coming along and we're fitting them onto here. Okay, now there's a clear obviously glass part that's going to go on, which will be the HUD, so we just sit those in just like that, and then obviously we can come around and paint those bit black. Now just to the rear you can probably see on this side, especially on the other side stands out better in the light, we've got the little sensors. These are for the ejection seat, again the resin one, but it doesn't have them at all. So what we've actually done here is we're using the kit part, okay, and all we're doing is snipping off the actual ones themselves. So we literally just cut these off just like this. Okay, then once we've got it off we can give it a bit of a sand and sand it into shape how it's going to fit onto the actual seat itself. So okay, there's one, and then the other one, just snip him off as well. Okay, now you just have to re-sand in the angle that they're on, because obviously the scissors tend to crush them. Okay, then once you've got it done, this one we've snipped a little bit, not quite enough off, there we go. And once you've got it done, and we just sand those in. Take our tweezers, it's a bit tricky this, so we just manoeuvre it around a little bit. Again, into our little pool of super glue we've just got off to one side. Okay, and then we can come up now. Hopefully this won't ping off. This is the usual way that these things happen. What we do, we just let that bite or start to bite. let it just grip a second before you sort of come back in. Okay, then once it's got a little bit of a bite to it, you should be able to just position it exactly where you want it to be. Like that. Oh, no, it's stuck to my tweezers, which is always the worry. So we just try that again. Okay, so that one's on the back there, just like that. We'll do the same, exactly the same on the other side in a moment. But all we'll do in the meantime, come along with our black paint and a small little brush. A nice one brush here. And then all we're going to do is just touch in these front areas. So make sure your super glue's dry before you come along and do this, otherwise what can happen is that you'll end up with your brush loaded with super glue, which isn't a good one to do. So we just do that, we just do these sensors on the sides and paint them up. Then obviously we can come back dry brush and weather and all the other bits that we do at this time, just to liven it all up. Okay, so that's those. Then at the same time what we've got is, just put a tiny bit more on there. Make sure you do the undersides of small parts as well. Okay, so I'll put the one on the other side, but as I say, also have a look around and make sure you've got in from all the angles. So I'll just turn this around a sec. I can check. In and then down the front. Okay. Just in like that. Now have to be careful in here because we've got a little bit of wet super glue. There we go. So that's the HUD and everything done just like that. Now at the same time we've also got hundreds of little wires. Now they're easy to spot because on the wingtips you'll see them coming off. Now they are tiniest little things you've ever seen in your life. You can do it two ways. You can either go on with a little bit of super glue and just tack them all on, or a little PVA glue, or you could use normal glue. If you're going to use the weld glue like we've done, the Tamiya extra thin, just be careful because the paintwork will bubble up because it's melted through. If you don't touch it, it will reset and you'll be fine. But it's one of those jobs you really want to do last because they're really easy to knock off on this particular aircraft. Okay. At the same time, we're also going to add those metal angle of attack sensors and everything else which come in your little bag, and your pitot tube on the PTO tube which goes on the front. Okay, those can go on and be painted at the same time as you do all the others. Alright, then after we've done that we can get the crew in, okay, and we're almost basically done with the aircraft itself, weapons fit, and we're done. Okay, you can always tell when we get near the end because the old glove goes on. So anyway, what we've done, painted up that cockpit as we said, crew is installed, we've used a little bit of twisted wire as an oxygen hose as it comes down. So if we carefully show you the crew, and they're in there just like that. So we've got the HUD, all the rest of it. As you said, metal needle has gone on the front, okay, for these front angle attack ones. Bit of a fiddly thing putting in there. Drop a super glue first, let it go semi-hard, then place them in, is the secret to that. Whilst we're around the front here, we've got the lantern pods installed. They're not decal jets, we'll decal them when they're on, and a quick flat coat just on that area, hence that's why we'll keep the canopy off just to finish those off. The only thing I will say is it is extremely close to the geared door, and it's one of those ones I can't understand how it is that close to it. It just appears that there's a misguide perhaps of something in there. I was going to try and move the entire pylon out a bit, but then it wouldn't line up with the outside shape of it. So I think there's some issue with the width of the door underneath there or something like that. So anyway, they are installed and just drying. So straightforward job, just gunship grey on those. The missiles we'll talk about in a moment. And then down the back you can probably see round the rear here and on the wingtips, see my hand there, we've got the actual diffusers or the electronics. So I can't think of the actual reference now, but they're like little antennas that hang off there and get rid of all the kinetic energy and stuff like that. So anyway, that is really around about it for the aircraft itself. Couple of tiny little bits to do on it, but as a fit that is done now. So what we can do is we're going to place this one nicely out of the way. Okay, and we'll just pop him down there. Clearing the area now to get on with the weapons. Now the weapons really are an important part of it. Sometimes if you're going to do pylons and have them unarmed, you know, they look absolutely as great, but if you're going to do it, you know, with the weapons, just take care of making sure that you've done the quality on the weapons, especially in 1/32, because really they can make it. So make sure you've got the decals on there and the paint scheme correct and everything else. Now, they tend to be a little bit complicated the way they all go and things like that. So what I tend to do is treat them like little models in themselves. Okay, so what we've done, we've actually glued, sanded and even polished them up. Okay, so they're all very nice. And then what we'll do, we'll just pop a couple of bits down here and we'll spray them, and we're going to spray them as you would the real model, okay, the full model. So we're going to start with a base coat and some priming, and I've done a little bit of priming, you probably see the darker greys here, just to really checking seams and everything else as we would. Okay, so we just get rid of what's in there. So we're going to take our grey here. This is the light ghost grey colour, which is 36320, something like that. You can have it a little bit darker or lighten it as they go through. So just give that a bit of a shake up. Alright, so we're going to spray this neat, okay, like we do certain other things, because that way it'll give it a nice texture as well. So tips of the missiles are going to be white, so we can hold them. So we just let the paint come through. And we're just going to spray these up. Okay. Make sure you get all around the fins and everything, even if they're going to be a different colour. Okay, so then we can leave that one just out the way like that. Okay, and the others. Now the bombs as well, they are this colour as well, only in a small area, but then what we can do, we can mask up those and take care of them as well. So again, making sure you do all the little things. So as I said, even these bombs here, only a certain part of them is going to be the actual colour. And instead of just checking the references, it's going to be the front end and the rear, okay? So we just do those areas for the moment. I'm actually running out of paint. So drop more. And then run the fronts of these. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on doing all the spraying, and we're going to mask these up just like mini models, and then we can come back once I've got them halfway there and install them onto the aircraft. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the weapons all done. Nicely done, to be honest. Some of the times you look at Academy weapons, they look a little bit chunky and out of scale, but to be honest, the new ones, comes with a new fret in the kit, are actually pretty much spot on. So for this one, we're going to use two laser guided bombs, as we've got here, and two GPS guided bombs. And as I said before, unfortunately, we can't use their horizontal ejector rack. We're going to have to use the triple ejector rack, because obviously that's the one that's got the electrics for sending the signals to the weapons, whereas the freefall ones don't. So quite simply, we've installed the crew into the cockpit now, and we've done those, and those guys are actually glued in now, okay, so they're in there, so they're not going to move anymore. So we just have to be a little bit careful turning over and things like that. So again, I'm just going to install my little foamy bits here, just so it doesn't get too much damage. And then for the rear one, I'm going to completely hold it off the ground as well. So if we do something like this, okay, so we should hold something like that, would be ideal, up on the upside down. So as you can see, we've actually got them down now. The weapons themselves actually always sort of cantilever over to one side. So to start with, we're going to install the fuel tanks. So we've got our centerline fuel tanks. Now again, I'm going to do this with a tiny spot of super glue, okay? So we're just going to come up to the pins, okay, and place a tiny spot of super glue. As I said, the reason for it, if we want to change it, we can make changes with no problem at all. Okay, we'll sit that in, and that should line up then with the fuel tank with the one at the rear. Might be a bit of a handy if I move this around to a slightly different angle so you guys can see it better. I'm just, because we've got all these lumps and bumps now all over this one, I'm just a little concerned we're likely to get this knocked. Okay, so that one's on there now. These giant fuel tanks, again, same type of treatment. They're just going to get a little spot of super glue, okay, and we're going to go round the entire thing, spotting and placing these in. So as I said, if you're going to be having this as a permanent fixture, then you probably need a little bit more than what we're doing here is just a spot of glue. You're probably going to need a little bit more, but for our purposes it means that we can change them, and as I said, if it does get a knock in transport, we don't have to worry about it too much. It should be fine. It's just these big fuel tanks here might need a little bit more than a spot, but we'll see how we hold on for the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick all these on. Okay, so there we go. The F-16 is all completely done, all wired up. It's been a cracking build from start to finish and thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of it. But this is where it doesn't stop, because obviously we've still got the electrics and we still want to put it on a base. So what we're going to do, we'll move it out of the way for the moment. And there it sits up there. Okay, so base time. Okay, now this is a very, very simple base. Just got a bit of cardboard, okay, and then down here all we've got is a Photoshop. So basically all it is a base with some dark lines put in to look like concrete sort of lines, some more blurred ones going across light effects, okay, piano keys just white and then dragged, soft edged, same with the numbering, okay, and the skid marks to give it impression of speed. Okay, so when we're holding it like this, you probably get more of a blurred look to it. So it's just got that impression, if we put it around this way, of it's actually got speed on it. Now, to be honest, we've got another base as well, which will be at the show, which you'll see will have runway lights, and it's all singing, all dancing, and absolutely lovely, and that's on a wooden one. But this is just to show you a basic of how I would do a base. So having this done, take it to a printer, get him to print it in A3, okay, so if you just take a JPEG image of it, he'll print it, probably cost you about £1, okay, and away you go, and you're all done. So all I've done then is taped it down the sides, taped it around the edge, because as you know this one's going to be sort of in a landing position, so the nose is going to be slightly off the end here, and to the back. Now, as I say, the paper has stretched on me somewhat, but we can take care of that all a little bit later. Now, two things we're going to do, because this is on a deserty environment, what we're going to do is we're going to have sand running up to the edges all along here. Now, because of that, there's no point getting like play sand, because it'll be the wrong type of sand. So what we've actually got here is builder's sand, and because it's building sand or paving sand, it's got bits of stone in it and grit as well as the lighter stuff as well. So you know, obviously just grab some from where you can. I'm not going to mention about nicking them from beaches and stuff like that, but it's basically the same stuff. Okay, we've got a very cheap craft glue, okay, and then all we're going to do is, let me get the top off, is just going to come along and just put a line down the back here, just like so. And then we're just going to take a brush, and then all we're going to do is going to come along and just going to brush it right up to the edge, okay, all the way over, so it's sort of speckly on here, okay, and then we're just going to take it up to the edge bits, up right up here, okay, and then I'm just going to continue putting this all the way along the entire back surface. Now all we're going to do is just literally just run little bits so it's right up to the edge of the, or would-be tarmac, or concrete in this case, because this is a Middle Eastern runway. They all tend to have that sort of concrete, like the Soviet Union block pattern. So we just carry this right along here, so we're just going to go around the edges and everything else. Now you could pre-spray this as well, literally airbrush this in to start with, but as I say, we're just doing just a quick job to show you the basics, and then obviously you could carry this on as far as you wanted to go. Alright, so we've got this on, and then taking a couple of scrap bits of paper are always handy to have, or a newspaper. Being me up here in the office, I haven't got one, so we're just going to grab a sheet of A4 just for the moment, and we just do this edge here. So we've got it down the edge, just down here. So because it's on to tape and stuff, we're just going to pop the glue and give it a work round to make sure it's not drying too quick in those areas, because it doesn't take long to go off this stuff. Okay, just like so. And then all we're going to do is come along with our sand and we're just going to pour it in. Okay, and we're just going to work it over the entire base. So we just put quite a bit on there, and what we do, we can knock this around then, and hopefully it'll stick to all the areas. But we want to make sure this edge is nicely taken care of. Okay, so just for the minute, I'm just going to run it up this edge. Just down. Then what we're going to do is obviously cover all this just randomly, and then by the power of magic, when you come back in 2 seconds, it should be all done. Okay, so there is our finished base. It's been left overnight just to dry off and everything else like that. And as you can see, it worked quite well. As I said, it's 10-minute job to do this. Obviously, if you want to do it a little bit nicer, you could take your time with everything else. Perhaps you wouldn't need the blurring as such if you wanted to have it more on a static display and everything else like that. But anyway, that's the job we have done there. So what we've got here is a couple of holes been placed just down in here for where it's actually going to sit. So I'm just going to stick a biro through these just to open up these holes a little bit. Okay, so we can just get the wiring all through there. This one at the rear doesn't have to be too big. So we've just got 3 holes. Now I made them oversized so really you can see them a little bit easier. Okay. So that is that one in now. So there's our base all sorted, all done. So now we can bring back the F-16. Okay, now we've got mountains of cables here. What I've done is I put little connectors on, just soldered on the joints. So we've now got full length ones so they can poke through the holes and everything else. So we've got 2 bunches of it. Now, I'll tell you the truth, the wiring is very fragile as it is on the gear. Okay, but what we need to do is do one to hold down the back of it, so it's holding it down on the ground as we go through. So for that we can use a little bit of invisible thread. You could use literally anything you wanted for this. Cotton will do it, everything else. So what I'm going to do, just for the moment so you can see it, and I'll change it in a minute, I'm going to use some red so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So we're going to take a long old length of this red cotton. Okay, and then all we're going to do is on the underside, under here, if we just flip it over very gently, we are simply going to put this through down the back here of the actual hook. Now, as I said, in a moment I'm going to change this for some what's called invisible thread, but just for the minute so you can see it, we just use a knife to pull it out the other side. Okay, and we can grab it with some scissors. Just pull it up, as you can see we've got it right here, and all I'm going to do for the moment is just pop a simple little knot on this one. As I say, nothing too heavy because I want to get it off. So just like a little granny knot on there. Okay, we'll cut the scissors if you have a decent pair of scissors. Cut the excess. Okay, then what we would do normally, you would glue this in place just down here. So if we just turn it around slightly, got to be careful because obviously we've got nice clear parts. You can probably see if we bring you in a little bit exactly what we've done here. So as I said, here it is just down in here, this red cotton, and that's going to come off, and already we've managed to ping off one of the bits for the gear, but it'll do just for the moment. So again, we'll just flip him over the right way. Okay, now all these cables and all this horrible stuff, hopefully we'll lose very, very shortly. So just for the moment, what we're going to do, we're just going to get all this cabling here. So we sort out your lefts and your rights of how it all is. Okay, so we've got the left-hand gear is going to go down in here. Now normally what you would do is obviously fix this to your base, and then it would never be seen again. Okay, but for us, because obviously this is going to a show, we need it to be transported. But basically, we're just going to poke this cable in through this hole. That one's down there. And then we can take this load of cable. Okay,
careful with it. That's going to go down in here. Now I've marked on the end of the cables exactly what they are and where they go and everything else like that. Okay, that's 2 of those in. So now last we've got the cord for the tail. Now this might have a bit of trouble going on, so what I'm going to do is just place it between some tweezers, push it through the hole so I can get it on the other side. Okay, that thread comes out. Okay, and all we're going to do now is very carefully pull everything down and out of the way. As I said, it's a bit of a handful getting hold of all these cables and all the areas. It'd be nice to do all this once. Okay, so we're just going to pull it all in to where it all sits. Grab all these cables out through the rear. So we've got them all coming to the back. This one for the tail. Okay, that's how it's going to sit. So if we bring you just down a little bit, obviously what I'll do afterwards, I'm going to run all the cables round so you can see exactly where it's all running to. But here we got them all coming out of here. So this is where you would feed them off to your other areas. But just for the moment, we're just going to lift the nose slightly. Okay, so we can have it in this sort of position, and then obviously normally what you would do is you could then tie this to exactly the right length you want, or glue it or something else like that. So for the moment what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally bung a weight on the end of this, and hopefully it will hold itself. Will be enough to hold the weight, but the nose will come up just like that. As I say, it's a bit of a thing because we need a better weight on the end of this. So what I'm going to do is pop a loop in. Nothing fancy. We'll do that in a moment. So what I'm going to do now, just for a minute, I'm going to change the camera angle, put you on a tripod down next to us so you can see it like I can see it.